Have you ever noticed how unpredictable life can be? One day, everything seems under control, and the next, we find ourselves surrounded by challenges that feel impossible to overcome. Uncertainty brings fear, anxiety, and the overwhelming sense that we have to figure everything out on our own. But what if I told you that you don't have to carry that burden? Here's the powerful truth. When God is in control, you have nothing to fear. The problem is that many people try to hold onto the reins of their lives so tightly that they end up frustrated. But Jesus already taught us that true freedom comes when we let go and fully trust our Creator. Does that sound difficult? Yes, but that's exactly where faith comes into play. And what if I told you that no matter how chaotic things seem, God already knows the path you should take? In this video, you'll understand why surrendering your life to God is the key to finding peace, purpose, and confidence, even in the toughest moments. So before we go any further, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content on spiritual growth and faith. Now, drop a comment below saying, "God is in control of my life." Let's declare this truth together and strengthen our faith. Life can be chaotic, unpredictable, and filled with challenges that make us wonder if we're truly in control of anything. But here's a secret most people don't realize. Trying to control everything only leads to anxiety and frustration. When someone chooses to surrender their life to God, they discover that real freedom isn't about holding on tightly. It's about letting go. As Matthew 6:34 says, worrying about tomorrow is pointless because each day already has enough challenges of its own. Trusting God means replacing fear with inner peace and understanding that He sees far beyond what we can. Many times, we're like someone driving through thick fog. We can only see a few feet ahead and feel unsure about the road. But God has the full view. He knows every turn and every obstacle. Imagine the peace of knowing that the pilot flying your plane knows exactly how to land, even when you don't understand anything about aviation. In the same way, trusting God's control means resting in the certainty that He is guiding your life with purpose, even when everything seems out of order. But trusting God doesn't mean sitting back and waiting for everything to fall into place. Surrendering to Him requires both faith and action. A person can start by talking to God daily, sharing their worries, and trusting that He will lead them in the right direction. Instead of obsessively worrying about the future, they can apply Matthew 6:34 by focusing on living one day at a time with gratitude and confidence. And it's exactly this kind of faith that transforms how we face challenges. The way we see our problems changes completely when we have faith. Without it, every difficulty feels like an impossible obstacle. But those who trust in God learn to see challenges from a different perspective. Instead of viewing chaos as the end, they begin to see it as an opportunity for growth. Psalm 46:10 reminds us, "Be still and know that I am God." In other words, in the middle of life's storms, there's an invitation to trust, take a deep breath, and remember that God has a greater plan. Think about someone who suddenly loses their job. For many, this would be a reason to panic. But what if that job loss is actually the doorway to a new path that God has already prepared? Maybe it's the push needed to start a business, find a job that aligns more with their purpose, or enter a season of learning and spiritual growth. People of faith understand that even when circumstances seem bad, God may be preparing something far greater. But here's the key. Faith needs to be exercised. Just like a muscle gets stronger with training, our trust in God grows when we put it into practice. It can start with simple steps, setting aside time each day for prayer, reading Bible verses about trust, or practicing gratitude by remembering how God has already provided in the past. When we live this way, our problems don't just disappear, but they lose their power to paralyze us. And it's in those waiting moments that God moves in unexpected ways. Waiting can be uncomfortable, but it's part of God's plan. So often, we want immediate answers, quick solutions, and clear signs of what to do next. But God operates on a different timeline than ours. While we're anxious for things to happen, He's working behind the scenes, setting the stage for an unexpected miracle. The problem is that in our rush to control everything, we often overlook the small divine interventions already taking place around us. Think about someone praying for a change in their life, but failing to notice that God is already at work in the details. Maybe a door closed because it wasn't the right path, or maybe something was delayed because it wasn't the right time yet. Waiting isn't a punishment. It's a season of learning and spiritual growth. When we understand this, we replace anxiety with peace, trusting that God is shaping every situation into something greater. But how do we wait without growing desperate? The answer lies in surrender. Instead of resisting God's timing, we can learn to rest in it. That means developing patience through prayer, strengthening our trust by meditating on His promises, and most importantly, continuing to move forward without fear, even when we can't see the final destination. Because in the right time, what once seemed like a delay will be revealed as the best possible choice. And through prayer and trust, we find the strength to keep going. Many people spend so much energy trying to solve everything on their own that they forget the power of prayer. Prayer isn't just about asking, it's a conversation with God, a way to align our hearts with what He has already prepared. Philippians 4:6-7 reminds us that we don't have to live in anxiety, but rather we should present everything to God in faith and experience the peace that surpasses all understanding. When we surrender our worries to Him, our minds become calmer and we begin to see situations from a new perspective. Imagine someone facing a major financial struggle. Desperation can lead to impulsive actions, poor decisions, or sleepless nights. But when that person chooses to pray and trust, something shifts. God may not deposit money into their account overnight, but He can open unexpected doors, send help through people, or reveal new ways to manage resources. Prayer doesn't just change circumstances, it changes who we are in the midst of them. Trusting God doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. It means taking action without fear, knowing that He is leading the way. Instead of exhausting ourselves trying to predict the future, we can focus on strengthening our relationship with Him. One practical way to do this is by setting aside a daily prayer time, writing down worries in a journal as an act of surrender, or simply practicing gratitude for what has already been received. Because when we learn to trust, peace becomes greater than fear. Many people search for peace in external circumstances, but true peace doesn't come from a life without problems. It comes from trusting in God. Those who put their faith in Him realize that peace isn't about avoiding challenges, but about knowing they don't have to face them alone. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us to trust in the Lord with all our hearts and not rely solely on our own understanding. That means letting go of control and allowing God to guide us, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. A clear example of this is someone going through a season of uncertainty, whether it's choosing a new career or making a big personal decision. Anxiety can push them to try to control everything, but when they surrender the situation to God, they begin to experience a peace they didn't have before. This doesn't mean that all the answers will come instantly, but it does mean that trusting in God turns fear into calm and doubt into clarity. But this peace doesn't happen overnight. It's built through small daily acts of faith. Meditating on Scripture, practicing gratitude, and remembering moments when God has already shown His care all help strengthen our trust in Him. When someone learns to live this way, They realize that no matter what happens around them, their heart remains steady, and it's precisely in difficult moments that this faith becomes even stronger. No one likes going through tough times, but the truth is that suffering can be a powerful tool for spiritual growth. When everything is going well, it's easy to trust in God. But it's in the challenges that our faith is truly tested and strengthened. Romans 8:28 reminds us that God works in all things for the good of those who love Him, even when we don't fully understand what's happening. Pain, no matter how hard it is, can bring us closer to God in a unique way. Think about someone who's gone through a great loss, whether it's a loved one, a relationship, or an opportunity that seemed perfect. In the moment, the pain can feel unbearable. But over time, that person might realize that God was preparing something bigger. Many people find their true purpose after a period of suffering, because during those times they learn to fully trust God. Spiritual growth rarely happens in comfort. It's in the struggle that we learn to depend on Him for real. The key is to change how we view pain. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we can ask, "What does God want to teach me through this?" The practice of prayer, studying the Word, and connecting with people of faith helps turn suffering into a learning experience. Because in the end, challenges aren't the end of the journey, they're just stepping stones to something bigger. And when we learn to live for God, every difficulty becomes an opportunity for growth. Living for God doesn't just mean going to church or following religious rituals. It means making faith the center of your life, allowing every choice, action, and thought to reflect trust in God. When someone truly decides to live for Him, everything changes: their priorities, their concerns, and even the way they view the world. It's not an automatic change, but a continuous process of surrender, learning, and spiritual growth. This can be seen in the small decisions we make every day: choosing to treat someone with kindness, even when it's hard; choosing to forgive instead of holding on to bitterness; choosing to trust in God instead of giving in to despair when problems arise. These actions reflect a life of genuine faith. Those who live for God understand that it's not just about words, but about daily testimony. Jesus called us to be the light of the world, and that light shines brightest when our actions show love, patience, and hope. But living for God doesn't mean perfection. Everyone fails, doubts, and stumbles. The difference is in the decision to always return to Him, no matter the circumstances. Prayer, studying the Bible, and fellowship with others who share the same faith are ways to stay strong on this journey. And the more you walk with God, the clearer it becomes that He has always been in control, leading everything toward a greater purpose. Now let me ask you, do you really trust that God is in control of your life? Or do you still try to hold the reins because you're afraid of what might happen? The truth is, trusting in God doesn't mean an absence of challenges, but the assurance that He's walking by your side every step of the way. Faith doesn't remove the difficulties, but it changes the way you face them. If everything we've discussed here made sense to you, it's time to take action. How can you start putting this trust into practice today? Maybe it's through a sincere prayer, surrendering your worries to God. Or perhaps deciding to live each day with more faith and less anxiety. The important thing is to take the first step and let God guide your journey. And if you want to continue learning more about faith, purpose, and the Christian life, don't go just yet. Watch the next video on the channel, where we'll dive even deeper into this topic. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and turn on notifications so you won't miss any content. Now tell me in the comments, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from this video? Let's talk.